I heard you want to mix like Dr. Dre. Today I'm going to show you how to do that entirely in the box. Hello people, it's James Machuziak here from the Studio Noir. First and foremost, welcome to the video. Today I'm going to be sharing with you some legitimate Dr. Dre mixing techniques. Now the reason why I say this with such confidence is because the majority of this information is based from a magazine interview Dr. Dre did in 2001 for Studio Sound. Now just before we get into it, I just want to add a little disclaimer. A lot of these tips will be for the intermediate to advanced level mixers out there. If you're more of a beginner, some of these terms might fly over your head, but stay tuned anyway because you might learn a little something. Disclaimer over. You ready? Let's jump into it. Now, in the early 90s, sort of that Chronic album era, Dr. Dre was famous for using the SSL 4000E console. The SSL 4000E typically had a brown knob and it was later developed to have the black knob EQ. A lot of plugin manufacturers have modeled this channel strip, especially Wave, UAD, Plugin Alliance, etc. Now, I know Plugin Alliance have the SSL-E with both versions on, so if you wanted to recreate that sound, you can flick between the two. Following on from the Chronic, in 2001, Dr. Dre did this interview and was pictured behind an SSL G series. Now, the typical G series had the pink style EQ. SSL did an orange style Pultec EQ, which obviously in the low end sounded more like a Pultec. Now, I'm not sponsored by Plugin Alliance, but they do some amazing emulations of the SSL boards. And you can also find the SSL G series pink style knob and the orange, 2-in-1 basically. So yeah, just to sum up this tip, if you're trying to sound like Dr. Dre, it's best off starting with a SSL emulation plugin. If you're trying to go for the Chronic, go for an E series. If you're trying to go for 2001 onwards, I'd probably go for a G series. Now, when you look at SSL channel strips, they will all have an EQ section and a dynamic section. Dr. Dre mentions using the EQs very rarely when recording, but a lot obviously when mixing. On the compressor, he uses a ratio of 8:10 typically, and sometimes even limiting, which I found pretty interesting. It's worth mentioning though that the SSL will add harmonic distortion and overall harmonics to the signal that you feed it. So when you're adding an instance to every single channel in your mixing session, this harmonic distortion will add up, creating a bigger, wider, textured sound. Now when it comes to vocals, Dr. Dre usually tracks his vocals with the Sony C800G. Obviously most of us can't afford this, but it's good to mention that he's using a very bright mic on the way in. So in the interview, Dr. Dre states his recording chain to be a Neve 1073 preamp into a DBX 160 compressor. Now the hardwares I've just mentioned have been emulated by plugin manufacturers also. Have a look around online and see which one that you like the sound of and try it out. Now another thing Dr. Dre mentions in the interview is the tape machine that he uses, which is the Studer A827. Now the tape he uses in the Studer tape machine is the Quantigy 499 tape. Now the closest plugin that I've found that you can use in your DAW to emulate this is the Slate Digital Virtual Tape Machines plugin. It's a great plugin. It offers you two different styles of tape, including the one I've just mentioned, followed by an IPS switch, which is 30 and 15. Now obviously using a tape machine will add some subtle tape compression, which will help glue your mix and glue all the tracks together. So yeah, try this out and let me know what you think in the comments. Now the last gem that Dr. Dre dropped in this interview is him using the SSL quad compressor. The quad compressor is found on the master section of every single SSL console. Now the SSL quad compressor is very famous in rock and hip hop. It typically gives you that sort of glued mix bus kind of sound. It's very punchy and can sometimes have that sort of pumping effect. Now Dr. Dre has a typical setting that he uses for the quad compressor that isn't mentioned in the interview, so yeah, you're welcome. It's the cross-eyed Dr. Dre setting, which is the attack all the way to the right and the release all the way to the left. So that would basically mean the slowest attack, fastest release. Typically on a ratio of 2:1 or 4:1, I think the stock is 4:1. And obviously light sort of threshold, so you're only doing a couple of dB at the most. And that will give you that sort of punchy, glued sort of feeling to your track. Now, Dr. Dre has dropped so many gems in this interview. If you want to read the whole thing, he talks about his MPCs and all that. The link is in the description. Now, I've given you all the essentials so you can go and download them plugin emulations and try this in your DAW. If you have any more questions or you'd like to know further on individual topics that I've discussed, please leave a comment or message me on my website and I'll be sure to answer all of your questions. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you soon. Peace.